me, Beth Mount is almost, to me, is an embodiment of that compassionate courage. I'm very fortunate to have her as a friend, as a philosopher, as a guide for me. She has completed almost 50 years, or will be completing 50 years of working in the field of working for the people with disabilities. That I happened to be with her in New York a couple of years back, and we went to this urban innovation office, one of the projects that she's supporting, bringing young people from with mental disabilities and other challenges from the edges of the communities in New Harlem area to the center of the heart, bringing the edges to the center of the heart. And I remember when I was there, I was freaking out. There was so much fear in that space. I felt within me but there was so much love that they held. And one of the young men got his first $10 earning, who had suffered so many challenges and exclusion from the society. That day, he stepped into his power, and the way Beth and her team embraced that, to me, is a practice. It's open mind, open heart, and open will in practice. That afternoon was transformative for me. I went through so many cycles from just dropping all that structures I have. So thank you, Beth, for that. And that's just a glimpse of what she brings individually and collectively at a systems level. And the other thing, she's an artist. She's a great quilter. If you happen to go to her house, you will be walking into another realm of art, and great artist, and her work, a beloved community. And she has written a great book and work on Heart of Artists, which is a guide for me. I have that on my table, the cards that she created. So I want to invite this artist, activist, and awareness practitioner into this space to tell us the story and maybe reflect on some of the challenges that we are bringing in here, Beth, through your story.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to enter into this warm fire. I watched the other two sessions, and I was acutely aware of how cold it feels outside, how cold it has been feeling outside, and how very much awareness practice is a part of strengthening, warming, lifting, and lighting us up against all odds. And so I guess that's part of my journey with many people who've been abandoned into dark and cold spaces where will and heart are frozen. And I just want to say, Catherine, I totally identify with the point that you just made about that tension between staying in a place of open mind, open heart, open will, and living with outrage, just complete and total outrage at all the injustice that is shutting us down, right? That is creating these cold places where people can barely survive. So I'll speak to that, and I'll be interested in the collective wisdom in this space about that. It's a really tough time in the worlds that I inhabit. And I will just say, it's always a strain for people who are the most marginalized to be finding their way to a higher potential. The journey is always one in which people are facing overwhelming structural violence, structural devaluation, and conditions that can really do crush people or can crush people. And so how in the world do we bring awareness practice to both supporting the possibilities that are in the lives of people and the possibilities that are wanting to be born in our communities so that all people have a chance to live a better life? How do we hold our awareness in that place and also grapple with the structures that are frozen and are destructive and are chaotic and that are really hurtful? So I don't have an answer to that. I just have many years of trying to make sense and sometimes trying not to lose my mind in the strain. So I just like to say that too, because these are perilous places. And so I suppose what I want to reflect upon are the ways that in the last 14 years since I met Arawana and Otto and Manish and the people in the Presencing Institute community, that it has really supported me to shift my awareness on many levels so that more is possible. And I think if I was going to say, what is the core of the awareness practice that I've come to appreciate more than ever, is this understanding that our attention is so powerful. Our attention is really our power. And so it's our superpower. And so how are we attending every day? And how are we organizing and aligning and directing our attention? So for example, for me at the moment, there is so much falling apart that to just continue to try to stay focused on pockets of possibility where people are inventing and adapting and creating truly interesting possibilities, right? In the middle of all this, it's astonishing. And I'll probably come back to that word more than once, because I have noticed in myself that when we're able to align more of our energy and attention to the spaces that are restorative, that are filled with the potential for open mind, open heart, and open will, that it is astonishing the creativity and the resilience and the decency that springs forth in those spaces. And then there is also the second aspect of attention that I feel like is a part of my daily practice, is the quality of my attention. So the first question is, where am I giving my attention? Like, what am I actually paying attention to? The second one is, what is the quality of my attention? So am I standing in a space of judgment, cynicism, and fear? Or do I have the potential to direct and create spaces that are more likely to have the quality of curiosity, compassion, and courage? And that relates, Catherine, to the point that you made about your outrage, right, with the companies that are literally mowing people down. So I call that state I get into, which I consider to be hate, right? It's a hateful place. It's I think of it as my thugness. So thug is an acronym for the hate we give. And so part of my awareness practice every day is to continually be mindful of where is my hate? Where is my thug, right? That the thug is not out there. Now there are thugs out there, and they tend to be in the places of the highest power, right? But how am I grappling with the challenge to not give in to that, right? Like, how do I not give in to being the thug? Because that's not being, that's a different kind of resistance. And yet, how do I not give so much of myself to that space, right? Without ignoring or denying that these powers of destruction are sitting on our shoulders and our backs in any moment. So I guess for me, that's I want to say that I have had a meditation practice for almost 45 years. I learned a really simple TM, right? Transcendental meditation. Sit twice a day for 20 minutes, in the morning and at night. But, the kinds of dilemmas that I'm describing, the ways that I find myself grappling with my own awareness and the power of my attention, is so much bigger than a meditation practice, if you're following what I'm saying here. And so I want to just talk about the height of my thugness. And just to say that in the early years of my work, there was a natural and naive way that we integrated working with people and families in small circles to find what more is possible and to redirect our energy and attention to these possibilities. And there was a natural way that we were using art and co-creating, bringing people together to see a vision, to make a vision together, and to experience their agency in the situations they were living in, right? Which is one reason that I try to make room for art in almost everything I do. And then there was a natural goodwill on behalf of the organizational stakeholders to change, to innovate. And so I think of that as kind of a charmed chapter, because there was an alignment of these three things, kind of personal engagement, creative, and organizational. And then I moved to New York State 30 years ago. And to make my 18 years of being a thug chapter as short as possible, I was really involved with young people in transition from New York City schools, which was exhilarating, which was astonishing, because we could hold on to those spaces of engagement, of curiosity and compassion and courage. And these are young people who spoke 1,800 different languages and from all walks of life, and have all different ways to communicate. And yet we were able to create these restorative, beautiful spaces that were life-changing, that were transformational. Manish talked about one of them he stepped into, right? But then you can't lift up the possibilities for people who are living, who depend on so many other people, without taking on organizations, right? You can't do one without the other, or we're raising people's expectations and leaving them in the middle of the strain that has been the force of limitation. And so I also worked for 18 years as a consultant for the commissioner for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities in New York State for 18 years. And it was about that time that I met Arawana and Otto. And I started to realize, that helped me realize how depressed I had become. in that I had so much contempt for these power brokers, right? Are you with me? Well, I could stay in this kind of uplifting, compassionate, courageous space with young people and their families. I was in this very contemptuous space with power brokers because right? Because the system, which is a $10 billion industry in New York State, is so profoundly misaligned to what it is that people really want and need in order to live a better life, right? So how do we deal with these systems that have so much power, so much control, and so much influence? And so I don't know the answer to that. What I will say is for the last 12, 13 years, and learning, understanding more about how my awareness practice, my personal awareness practice had been disconnected from my organizational and community activism. And so what did it look like? What does it look like to try to keep those things together, integrated? And I will say, just in summarizing, what I became acutely aware of is that that in spite of myself, I was still often coming into a space in a highly controlling mode, hoping to manipulate other people, and stuck in what I think of as conditional habitual patterns that's what I mean by my thug self. And it's aggressive and it's extractive. And so that place of frozen will, frozen mind, and frozen heart is fundamentally extractive. And where I have shifted dramatically over these last 12 years is towards designing and cultivating spaces that are not extractive, right? In which how we learn and think together are colored by non-aggression. And for me, that means, and Arawana, these are Arawana's words, to perceive and respond without an agenda, to maintain a loose and curious mind, and to take direction from this space. And I'll finish by just describing an encounter that we were able to create with power brokers from New York State. Arawana was involved in this. It was a 3-day Theory U event at the Garrison Institute here in New York, where we brought the commissioner who wanted to be there. I just want to say, so someone who wants to be there is not the dictator that is crushing people. Okay, so let's just make that really clear. And also the biggest organizations in New York where the CEOs wanted to be there. And we together engaged in this dance of meditation and movement and drama and art. Young people with disabilities came from the city and sat in meaningful conversations with power brokers. And it was a deeply restorative and heart-filled, compassion-filled space. And out of that, the commissioner at the very end of this said to the whole group, oh my gosh, I have seen from just these 2 days, I have seen that the $10 billion we spend has absolutely nothing to do with what really matters to people. Maybe only 1% of that is what is meaningful to people. And to make a long story short, and I'm going to finish now, so this is how I'll shorten this. He got fired. Okay, so, but it did not take away, and it has still not taken away, the agencies that were there 12 years ago at this event, where everybody took off their shoes and, laid on the floor together and moved and talked and grappled. Even in COVID, they are still doing astonishing things, right? Astonishing. And so it has strengthened for me. I guess that's the point I'm really wanting to finish on, that all of these practices, they're strengthening, right? They strengthen us to stay aligned with people who will benefit from this kind of alignment. They strengthen us to stay in this terrible tension between utter and complete darkness and destruction and astonishing possibility. They strengthen us to stay there. And that's what I'm learning from awareness-based practice. Every time we practice is a form of resistance, right? Practice is a form of resistance, strengthening. I'm holding up my yellow pen here because if my yellow highlighter is my symbol for seeing possibility, right? For focusing on possibility, for focusing on restoration. Where are these restorative practices? Where are we making spaces to be supportive of each other, right? Where are we finding the strength to keep going in the gap that Kirk talked about? Someone wrote in the tragic gap, right? That's the Parker Palmer's reference to the tragic gap. Anyway, I just am touched by all of these comments, and also that we're all struggling, right, to find a way to put the next foot forward. To me, that's what a pocket of possibility is, right? It's a little space that's coherent and restorative and aligned. I love the image of soft power. Thank you so much, because you're not going to grow a little forest with a harsh, you're not going to, the only way to do that is through nurturing and through soft, but determined, right? So I just want to say that there is a huge distinction between soft. It's not a passive softness, right? It's an incredibly fierce softness. It's not weak, it's fierce, but it's a fierceness that isn't aligned with the qualities that are crushing us.
Something I learned from Peter Senge around systems thinking, that there isn't any system out there, that we are the system, right? We co-create collectively on the planet. Each of us co-creates social reality, moment by moment by moment. That living is in itself a creative activity. And yet we are creating so often, right? And on such a massive scale, a social reality that we don't want, that doesn't work for so many people on the planet. Awareness practice is space. It opens the mind to be able to hold ambiguity, the heart to behold all of the different feelings of close and open, and all of the feelings that come up, right? As a human, as me as a human, as you as a human. And this can clarify this as Beth said, where to put your next foot. And Otto said, sometimes the only thing you can know is which direction you're facing and where to put your next foot. And that seems, again, like a small thing, the small forest, the small team, the small gathering. And yet there's incredible power there in just where to make our next move out of this ground of what is it for all of us on the planet, of humanity and the planet, the health of the planet itself. We're not trying to make fear go away. That would be just kind of stupid. That would really be in denial. But we feel it. We can feel our own fear. And then be there. That is what we call courage. That is what we call a genuine heart of bravery. Because right now on the planet, we need it, right? We need not bravery like puff up and, rally on, but this soft power where we feel that our own open mind, our own open heart, our own open will, our own goodness, our own wisdom can actually shine out. And this sense that our awareness is the base of that, right? We need to notice. And then we can turn our attention, right? We turn our attention where the astonishing possibilities are.